Good morning, everybody, and happy Saturday. It's time for our April 24th, 2021 teacher workshop. I know that you're all super excited, and I appreciate everyone being with me this morning and spending your Saturday with me. It's a beautiful day outside where I'm at, so let's go ahead and get this party started and get this done so we can start enjoying our Saturday and get outside with some nice weather. So our topic today is going to be on the required trainings that are in the Child Care Minimum Standards. These are federally mandated trainings. Kind of the history behind these 6 topics that we're going to be talking about today is that back in 2014, the federal government, the Child Care and Development Block Grant Act, did a comprehensive review of their standards and updated these and sent them out to the states. We received it here in Texas in 2016, so September of 2016, these 6 training topics were made mandatory. They have to be covered during new hire orientation, and then they have to also be done every single year. So, the way I've done this in the past is that I have all of these topics broken down individually on my website, timthetrainer.com, but we're 5 years into having to do these trainings, every single year. So I thought it would be a good idea to do a condensed version and kind of lump all 6 of these topics together into one training to kind of help you out, those of you that have been doing this over and over and over again. So think of this as kind of like an advanced course, or a 2.0 course on these 6 particular topics. And it's okay because in the Child Care Minimum Standards under 746.1309 E as an elephant, it does say while there are no clock hour requirements for the topics listed below, your annual training must include these 6 topics. So it doesn't matter how long it takes us to cover these topics as long as they're covered every single year. We're going to spend about 20 to 25 minutes on each of the topics today so that we can get them all in our allotted amount of time. Now, for those of you that have never joined one of our webinars before, welcome. We're so happy that you're here. The way this works is that we are on Facebook Live right now, and so we are live. You have the opportunity to chat, like many of you are saying, good morning, good morning, good morning, hello, hello, hello. So you have the opportunity to ask questions or make comments in your chat screen. Because this is live and you are participating live on April 24th, 2021, this makes it an instructor-led training, which is 20% of your training hours here in Texas. Now, this is also being recorded. So if you're watching the recorded webinar, then that's going to count as self-instructional hours, which is 80% of your training here in Texas. All right. At the end of today's workshop, there's going to be a link for you to complete an online worksheet, all right? So that's kind of how we take attendance, that's how we know who is here, and that's how you're going to get your certificate of completion. So once again, at the end of today's webinar, you will click on the link that I will post, and you will complete an online worksheet, submit that to me with the appropriate payment, and then I will email your certificate of completion. Most of you have done this before, you know how it works, and so those of you that, like I said, are new, it's a very easy process, all right? So, since we are on a very tight schedule today, we've got a lot of information to cover in our short time that we are together today. And I like to try to give you time to complete your online worksheet this morning instead of having to do it later on. I am a big believer in get it done, all right? I'll do it later on this weekend. Yeah, then you don't get it done, okay? So I like to give you time to get that done. So we're on kind of a tight schedule right there. I am going to ask 2 favors of you, okay? I got two favors I'm going to ask you. Number one, I'm going to ask that your questions or comments stay on topic. All right, so whatever topic we're talking about, if we could please make sure that our questions and comments stay on topic. If I see a question or comment that comes up that has nothing to do with the material we're covering right now, I'm probably just going to skip over it. I'm going to warn you all that right now, okay? Unless it's a really good question or comment, and then I might, go ahead and talk about it, all right? The other favor that I'm going to ask of all of y'all this morning, please, okay, is that this is a non-COVID, non-pandemic related training. So we're going to do these topics today, and we're going to pretend that it is a normal world and COVID doesn't exist, all right? Or that we haven't been in a pandemic for the past year. So I want to make sure, especially because this is being recorded, that, we kind of stick to the topic and not make this about COVID or the pandemic. I'm sure COVID is going to come up from time to time, all right? But like I said, I really want to kind of stick on topic right there. All right, so the 6 topics that we're going to be covering today: emergency preparedness, all right, always important, and I'm a big believer that, you do need to practice emergency preparedness, not just once a year, probably once a month, all right, because look at this crazy world we are living in. We always need to be prepared and ready for a significant event. Preventing and controlling the spread of communicable diseases, including immunizations. Well, that's a topic that we're all very, very familiar with these days. We're kind of experts on this topic these days, but we're still going to go over the basics for you right here. And then kind of some enhanced procedures as well. We'll talk about administering medication. We'll talk about preventing and responding to food allergies. Those two are typically pretty easy. And then understanding your building premises. And then the last topic we'll talk about today is handling, storing, and disposing of hazardous waste. All right. Now, very, very important bit of information about these 6 topics. The information that I'm going to give y'all today is going to be pretty generic. All right. It's kind of a template for you. All of these topics are very specific to your school. All right, your emergency preparedness policies, your crisis plan, all right, your relocation sites. Everyone's going to be different. Your building premises, all of our buildings are going to be different. All right, your policy on administering medication and who administers medication in your school, it's going to be different. And of course, food allergies. I have no idea which children in your program have food allergies or what food allergies you currently have. So I'm going to give you some very basic information, but you have to fill in the blanks, all right? And that's very, very important when we talk about these particular topics, all right? And in lots of my other trainings, we mention this right here. Now if I was doing child growth and development, or if I was doing positive guidance and discipline, or age-appropriate activities, yeah, I can give you some very factual, concrete, here's how it is type of information. But for these topics, they're very specific to your school, all right? And I'll probably mention this quite a few times as we go through the material, all right? I'm going to show you all several props. So I've got a lot of different samples that I'm going to show you all today. Most of these can be located on my website, timthetrainer.com. If you go to documents, there's quite a few documents that are on there. I'm in the process of kind of cleaning that page up. It's gotten, especially in the past year, kind of messy. So we're working on getting that cleaned up. Not everything I'm going to show you all today is on my website, but we also have our child care survival guide. And our Child Care Survival Guide is a very large binder that is full of sample policies and procedures and forms. And so it comes with a CD-ROM, and all of the documents are on a CD-ROM, and you can change them up or put your logo or whatnot on there. And that's available for purchase on our website too. I'm telling you all this at the beginning because as I continue, and as I go through the material, a lot of times people are like, "Hey, can you share that form?" You can buy my book, or several of them are on my website that you can download for free. All right. Let's talk about emergency preparedness. Let's get this party started. All right. Not a fun topic, but a very important one right here. Never get the kind of attitude that that's not going to happen to me. All right. Significant events can happen to every single one of us. One thing that I say in so many of my trainings: bad things happen to good people. All right. These things happen, and you need to be prepared. All of the items that I'm going to talk about, there's 9 items that I'm going to talk about in your emergency preparedness plan. Y'all need to make sure that you're practicing. All right. Now, child care licensing requires us to do fire drills once a month. They require us to do severe weather drills 4 times a year. They require us to do a lockdown or intruder drill 4 times a year. I don't think that's enough. All right. My recommendation to you is at least every month in a staff meeting, you practice one part of your emergency preparedness. All right. Very important right there. Of course, child care licensing is going to want you to always post your emergency telephone numbers by any telephone that is used by your operation. You're going to post your emergency phone numbers. And this is a template that you can download straight from Child Care Licensing's website. It's a really good template. It's a kind of a fill-in-the-blank thing. I like it. All right, so no need to reinvent the wheel when the wheel's already made for you, unless you want to condense it down and make it a little bit smaller. All right, make sure that your emergency phone numbers are posted by every phone that is used by your program. The other thing is make sure that your relocation and evacuation routes are posted in any part of your building that children have access to. So any room that children have access to, you need to have your emergency relocation and evacuation routes. So, of course, the classroom, if you have a cafeteria, if you have a gym, some of you take your children to chapel, all right? All of these areas, you need to have this posted, okay? Now, really important right here, on your emergency evacuation and relocation plans, if you're a brand new employee coming into your facility for the first time, make sure you look at this, all right? Make sure you become familiar with this. This is really important. Where are all of the fire extinguishers located in your program? Okay, how do you operate the fire extinguishers in your program? Again, don't ever think that's not going to happen to me. I actually own a facility that about 5 years ago, we had a fire in our 3-year-old boys' bathroom in the middle of the day. The teacher started smelling smoke, and we started noticing smoke in the hallway. Couldn't figure out where it was coming from. Finally, someone opened the boys' bathroom door, and the air vent that is up in the ceiling had malfunctioned and caught on fire and was burning up in the ceiling in the attic. We were so blessed and so lucky because when it fell from the ceiling, it landed in the toilet. How lucky is that? But it actually fell on fire and landed in the toilet. But, of course, the teacher screaming, the director runs back there. My director was my hero because she immediately grabs the fire extinguisher off of the wall and puts the fire out in the boys' bathroom. All right. So, we got very lucky. We did have to close the school for the rest of the day because of the smoke that was in the building. But that was it. So you just never know. You never know. You need to know the location of those fire extinguishers and how to use them. Also, you're going to note on your evacuation and relocation plan, where do you go in the event of a fire? So if you do have to evacuate the building, you need to have a primary exit and a secondary exit. And when you're doing your fire drills every month, practice both, all right? So directors and administrators that are watching this, you know, throw them a curveball every once in a while and block the primary exits with a box or something. Put a big, you know, fire on it and make them practice the secondary exits. That's so important right there. You know, and you want to do that. Now, like you can tell on this one, the green boxes that I have, that's where we go in the event of severe weather. Okay, so anytime you have to duck and cover, you got a thunderstorm coming, that's where you go right there. Now, what you're not going to notice on my evacuation and relocation plan is I do not have indicated where do you go in the event of an intruder and you have to lock down your facility and hide your children. That's not on my my plan right there. That's something you're going to keep discreet and confidential. I go into programs, I visit programs all the time, and I'm like, oh, you know, what are the little red circles? That's where the fire extinguishers are. Well, what's the green boxes? That's where we go in the event of severe weather. Well, what's the blue? Oh, that's where we go in the event of an intruder. Y'all, you just told the intruder where you're at, all right? Don't put that one on here, all right? So you're going to keep that nice and discreet. When you do have an emergency in your program, all right, of course, breathe and stay calm, all right? You can handle this. You know, so many times when I talk about emergency preparedness, people are like, I don't think I can handle it. I don't think I can do it, you know? Well, it's amazing when your adrenaline kicks in what you can handle, all right? We actually had a tornado at one of my schools one time. Tornado and softball-sized hail. We had everyone ducking and covering in the middle of the building. I've never been so afraid in my entire life. It was so loud. It was so crazy. But the amazing thing, whenever we had that tornado and hailstorm, everyone was so calm. The adults were calm. The kids were calm. It's like the adrenaline kicks in and you just do what you've got to do. It was the most amazing experience. It was a scary experience and amazing experience at the same time. I never want to do it again, but it was so interesting. Now, everyone started freaking out after the storm was done, and they looked outside and they saw their cars totaled, and, you know, it looked like a war zone outside. That's when everyone freaked out. But during the actual storm, it was amazing, all right? But practice active calming techniques, all right? So that in the event of an emergency, you can stay calm. Remember, your state dictates the children's state. So if you panic, the children are going to panic. If you remain calm, the kids are going to remain calm, all right? So there you go. Now, y'all might want to take notes. Those of you that are got a pen and paper handy, make sure you're taking notes because you know, some of this stuff is going to show up on your worksheet earlier or later on. I can't talk all of a sudden. Later on, so kind of take notes, and I'll try to tell you when we come across a worksheet question. Just remember also that this is being recorded, so if you miss some information, you can always go back and watch it again. So, you know, don't feel like, oh, hey, can you repeat that? Can you repeat that? You can just go back and watch it again later on. All right? So, tornado, bad weather. All right, now I live up in North Texas. We have bad weather all the time. We had storms yesterday. All right? Of course, stay calm, watch the kids, not the situation. Sometimes when we have bad weather come in, people will want to tune in to the news or social media or their weather bug or they're looking outside the window. Your focus needs to be on the children, all right? The administrators are going to keep an eye on the storm and keep you up to date, all right? So don't lose sight of the supervision of the children. That's always priority right there, all right? If you do have to duck and cover, you want to make sure that you grab your sign in and sign out sheet, all right, or your transition sheet or roll call sheet, whatever you call it in your facility, but you want to grab that attendance tracking document that you have, all right. Grab a flashlight. That's that flashlight that is required in all of your classrooms. Grab that flashlight. Make sure it's working, all right. And I always like to keep a bag of some toys or books or manipulatives that are used only in the event of an emergency. Because when you do get to your safe haven, when you get to your, wherever you're going for the severe weather or the fire, you're going to need to entertain the kids somehow. All right. So puppets or a book or a little box of manipulatives, have that ready and available to grab on your way out the door. Okay. Make sure that you go to your designated area, and then you do your duck and cover. All right. Now, it's really interesting. The question I get here is, when you're doing your duck and cover, do you duck and cover to the wall, or do you duck and cover away from the wall? Y'all, it's your preference, all right? You can go online, you can research this, you can take some different classes on emergency preparedness, and it's about a 50-50 mix of information. Some people tell you duck and cover to the wall, some people tell you duck and cover away from the wall, all right? As long as you're ducking and covering, that's what's important. In addition to grabbing your sign in and out sheet, the flashlight, and your bag of toys, always have an emergency binder in your classroom that has copies of the child's enrollment forms, and also a copy of your emergency authorization to seek medical treatment, all right? And that's all part of your enrollment packet. Make sure your emergency binder stays up to date with the children that are currently in your classroom. So if you have someone leave, make sure you take out their stuff. If you have a new child come in, make sure their stuff goes into your emergency binder. When you do have to, go to shelter, all right, so in this case, severe weather or a fire drill or whatnot, you're going to want to make sure you grab your emergency binder and take it with you. In the event that there is a significant event, when the emergency personnel shows up, they're going to need to know how to take care of not only you, but all of the children. So this is a very, very important tool. All right. We do it with page protectors, and we put a copy of the child's enrollment form. And I like to put a current photo of the child. We'll attach a current photo of the child to their paperwork in the emergency binder. So once again, if emergency personnel show up, they can identify that child with their medical information, okay? And make sure you do it for you too, the adult, all right? Several of us adults have some medical conditions that if we were, knocked out and the emergency personnel showed up, they need to know some specific things to properly take care of us. So don't forget about you right there. Those of you that are in the infant room, you should have your evacuation cribs that are designated as evacuation cribs. They've got the supports on the legs to keep them from collapsing. So basically you're going to put, 4 babies in a crib, and you're going to roll them out of there. Always make sure your evacuation cribs are the cribs closest to the exit door. All right. Sometimes I go into infant rooms when I'm doing quality assessment checks, and I see the evacuation crib kind of in the back corner of the room, and there's a lot of other furniture and equipment that is blocking it. All right. If you were to actually have an emergency, that's going to cause a problem, because you got to get those babies out of there and get them out quick. And if you got to move furniture or move tummy time equipment, that's going to be a problem. So make sure that your evacuation cribs are the ones closest to the door, and they have a clear exit, all right, so that you can get those babies out of there, all right. What I like to do, especially for tornado and bad weather, is you'll put, 4 babies in a crib, and I know they're going to be crying and freaking out. Now, this one again, your babies are a little bit different. I still believe that your state dictates their state, so if you stay calm, they're going to calm. But whenever you put the babies in the crib, grab another mattress out of another crib and put that mattress on top of your evacuation crib. All right. So once again, once you do get to your safe haven, your destination, if you do have flying debris, it's going to help protect those babies that are in the crib right there. All right. Come up with some nice fun songs to sing while you're in your evacuation spot. Like I said, puppets, books, those type of things. And then your director will let you know, when it's time to go back to your room. All right. Communicable disease outbreaks. So we got tornado and severe weather. Number 2 is communicable disease outbreak. All right. You need to make sure you've got a good plan in place, an exposure plan. This is basically what OSHA calls this, is an exposure plan on how you're going to keep this contained in a general area right there. You want to make sure that you follow all policies and procedures regarding diaper changing, toileting, hand washing, food preparation, and general common sense measures such as keeping surfaces clean, changing bedding whenever it's soiled with a bodily fluid, teaching children how to cover their coughs and their sneezes, all of that stuff to prevent the spread of germs and diseases. All right. If you do have an outbreak of a communicable disease, of course, you have to report that to child care licensing, and you're going to report it to your local health department. You will then follow their specific instructions, all right? Now, I know over the past year, this has been one of our biggest frustrations because every local health department is giving different direction. It is what it is, folks, all right? I just talked to somebody on the phone on Thursday that was having an issue with their local health department and the direction that they were being given. And I'm like, sorry, it is what it is. All right, you got to follow their direction. Okay, but there's a lot. What y'all got to understand here is that there's a lot of factors they have to look at. All right, how many cases are in your specific area? Are you in a hot spot? They got to look at that right there. How many people did the ill person come into contact with, and the length of time that that person came into contact with them. There's a lot of things they got to take into consideration to give that direction. So it is by a case-by-case basis. All right. Once the director or administrator receives those instructions from the health department, they will pass on that information to the staff on a need-to-know basis. All right. All right, and then of course, you're also going to notify parents of the individuals that were infected by the disease outbreak, and that's going to be part of the plan from the health department. Very important for you, whenever you do have an illness or disease outbreak, that you respect and follow your confidentiality policies, all right? We do have privacy laws in this country that must be protected, so you cannot share specific information such as the ill person's name or the names of the people that they came into contact with, and you cannot share the specifics about the illness to individuals that it would be a breach of confidentiality. All right, y'all, this is probably one of the scariest parts of this, is that especially with our current situation with the pandemic, I have said since day one, when people call me concerned about lawsuits, the lawsuits aren't going to happen during the pandemic. The lawsuits are going to happen after the pandemic. And the breach of confidentiality and people that disclose private information, I think we're going to see a lot of this, all right, in the days and months to come, okay? So you got to keep it confidential, all right? Information is shared on a need-to-know basis only. All right, so we did severe weather, we did communicable disease or illness outbreak, and now we're going to go into lockdown. All right, so when you have an intruder that comes into your program and they want to cause harm, my recommendation to you is to always contact your local first responders. All right, so your local fire department or police department. Most areas of the state or the country have a first response unit. Give them a call and ask them to come out to your program and walk your building, go over your emergency preparedness plan, and give you feedback. All right. If you can get them to come to a staff meeting and do a little 20-25 minute presentation, I think that's a good idea too. I'm actually kind of surprised that it's not required that you share your emergency preparedness plan with your first responders. If you were to have an actual significant event, they're going to be the ones that are showing up. So it would make sense that they would be involved in this process, right? If you're having to hide your kids somewhere, you're having to lock down, they need to know where to find them, right? So I think that's a good idea. The thing I want y'all to be careful with doing trainings and having people come and speak to your staff about lockdowns and hostages and intruders is we want to prepare people. We don't want to scare people. All right. And I have seen some of these trainings do more harm than good. All right. But it is definitely something that we need to practice right there. All right. You're going to come up with a crisis plan that is specific to your center. So if you're a brand new employee watching this video, ask your director, what is our crisis plan? Okay. So I'll give you an example of one. One that I have done in the past is that, if you are in the classroom and you have someone come into the classroom that there is a reason to believe that you need to lock down or there is a danger, all right? So maybe the parent is intoxicated or the parent appears to have a weapon or whatever the situation may be. Then, we had a plan at one point in time where the teacher would go to the phone, call the front office, intercom or whatever you've got in your classroom, a walkie-talkie, and say, hey, director, can you bring me the red butcher paper? And that was code word for, I need you to get back here right now, all right? Now, we don't ask for red butcher paper when you have a child that is having a discipline problem or you need to go to the bathroom, all right? Asking for red butcher paper is for serious situations, all right? Now, on the opposite side of that, we also had the same plan that if the director ever got on the intercom and did an all call to the entire school and said, hey staff, if you have the red butcher paper, can you please bring it to the office? And that was code word for something's going on, lock down your classroom. All right. Now, if the director gets on the intercom and says, hey, if you've got the red butcher paper, can you please bring it to the office? Don't go sticking your head out the classroom door going, I wonder what's going on. Ooh, what's happening, No, we need to take this serious, all right? And we're going to lock down the children. Now, this is where, again, I think it's important for your first responders to walk your building so that they can help you designate a safe place to do your lockdown. Typically, you want there to be two doors. So, a door that you go into, but a door you can get out of, if possible. Sometimes they like to avoid telling you to use like a closet or a bathroom that has no secondary exit, because then you're just kind of trapped in there, all right? But for some of you, that might be your best option. In some cases, a lockdown or an intruder type situation, it might be that you go to the exit door and you just run. All right, because some of you, your building may be designed in a way that you don't have an area where you can hide. All right, so again, this is one of those topics that's going to be very, very specific to your individual center. So you are going to want to have a talk as a team and come up with your areas that you're going to lock down and where you're going to hide when needed right there. All right. It's best to turn off the lights if possible so it looks like the classroom is vacant. If you leave the lights on, then it's pretty obvious to the intruder that you're hiding somewhere, all right? So if you have the opportunity to turn off those lights, do it. Once again, make sure that you grab your sign in and out sheet. Make sure that you grab your emergency binder, and these items go with you, all right? If you don't have a phone in your classroom or an intercom system in your classroom, I would invest in walkie-talkies. They're very affordable these days. They're good quality that work in your area. That's what I would suggest. I would avoid using personal cell phones because we run into an entitlement issue. Also, using personal cell phones, you run into a wage and hour issue. All right. But again, I don't want to get off subject by talking about that, but walkie-talkies would be your best friend that are only used in the event of an emergency. again, I don't want to get too far off topic, but we've been using walkie-talkies right now, for escorting children to and from the front office with, parents picking up and dropping off at the front door. Hey, Jordan's mom is here. Get Jordan ready. I'm on my way back. And it's been very helpful with the walkie-talkies. All right. All right. Accidents and illnesses. All right. So, very important part of your orientation and something that needs to be discussed at least once a year. What are your policies and procedures for dealing with accidents and illnesses? All right. Obviously, you need to care for that person. You're going to follow your basic first aid training that you get every year. Make sure that you have adequate supervision of the rest of the children when you're dealing with an accident or illness. Sometimes we put all of our focus on the injured or ill child, but we ignore the rest of the group. And then you have another injury or another incident and it just snowballs on you. So if you have 2 people in your classroom, you want to designate one person that's going to deal with the injury or illness, and the other person is going to stay focused on the rest of the children. That's very important right there. Okay? Now, if you are the only person in the classroom and you have an illness or injury, you want to make sure that you position yourself in a way that you can care for this child, but then you can also supervise the rest of the group. I have a training, a webinar that is on my website called Engagement Techniques. If you need some additional training on, how to properly supervise the children in a situation like this, check out that training on engagement techniques. I also have one on safety and supervision techniques that would be very helpful for this particular topic. All right. Apply the first aid as needed. All right. Call 911 if applicable, and make sure that you notify the child's parent. All right. But that's what you're going to do in those situations. If it's an ill child and it is not a severe illness, just an illness that the child needs to be excluded from care, you can still care for that child in the classroom as long as the child is separated from the rest of the group and adequate supervision is given. Make sure that you pay close attention to sanitizing and disinfecting and hand washing, bodily fluid, those type of things. All right. Now, if it is a severe illness, like you have to call 911, then obviously the child would go to the office at that point. All right. Chemical spills. All right. Explosions and chemical spills or gas leaks. All right. Now, again, this one might be one that you're thinking, oh, I don't think we're ever going to have one of those. You'd be surprised. I remember being in middle school. I grew up in East Texas, so I grew up in the country, but we had to evacuate middle school because there was a train that derailed and it spilled chemicals, and they evacuated the entire town in the middle of the day. So I never will forget that. We were like, woo, we're out of here, but it was a serious situation. We were in middle school. Come on, give us a break. But things like this could happen right there. All right. Now, the first thing is you're going to refer back to your emergency preparedness on fire, but also on off-site evacuation and relocation. We'll talk about that here in just a little bit. All right. If it is happening, outside of the facility, close and lock the door if possible. Turn off your air conditioners and your heaters. You don't want the air circulating if you've got chemicals in the air right there. Turn off lights, computers, TVs, radios, CD players, aquarium pumps, or anything else that could spark. All right. So if you have gas in the air, you don't want anything to spark and ignite it. All right. Keep the children seated on the floor. Make sure that you're staying calm. All right. Be prepared to evacuate whenever you're told to do so by your director. Make sure you grab your sign in and out sheet. Make sure you grab your emergency binder. Tell the children to pull their shirts up like this and try to breathe, through their shirts. Now, right now, of course, we have masks that are, available to us. That would be helpful, but if no mask, tell them to breathe through their shirts right there. All right. If you are having to evacuate due to a chemical spill or gas leak, consider crawling on the floor. You want to try to stay as low to the floor as possible in that type of situation. All right. If you have a bomb threat in your program, so if you're the one answering the telephone and there is a bomb threat, you want to make sure you grab a pen and paper, write down everything that the person says. All right. Specifically ask them, where is the bomb? All right, if they tell you, make sure you write that down. All right. You want to immediately call 911 and take every phone call like that serious. Now, in the event of an off-site evacuation or relocation, all right, so off-site evacuation and relocation. Once again, your primary responsibility is to keep the children safe. All right, grab your sign in and out sheet. Grab your roll call sheet, grab your emergency binder, and stuff it into clothing or a bag if you've got it. Infant toddler teachers, if you have time to grab diapers and wipes, grab diapers and wipes. You're going to need those at wherever you're relocating to. If you don't have time to grab diapers and wipes, don't stress about it. All right. I had a situation one time where we had to evacuate our program because we had no water. All right. Now, in that situation, we were able to take our time, get what we needed, contact parents, and we were able to relocate to our safe haven. That one, most of our parents didn't have water either. We weren't dealing with a whole lot of kids that we were evacuating. However, many years ago, I worked for an organization. It was a national child care company when the Oklahoma City bombing happened. And we actually had a school in downtown Dallas. And I happened to be at the closest neighborhood school that had buses and vans. And I got the phone call to go assist in evacuating the center that they had in downtown Dallas that happened to be in the federal building. So that was a scary day because on that evacuation, you just grabbed those kids and stuffed as many as possible in a bus and you got them out of there. All right. There was no grabbing diaper bags. There was no, let's get this organized. It was get them out. All right. So that was a very scary situation that I'll never forget right there. All right. Try to, if you are having to put kids on buses or vans or cars, try to mix it older kids and younger kids so that the older kids can help assist with the younger children right there. That's always helpful. I think it's, Jordan, I think it's a really good idea that you do have an emergency bag. And again, it could be for fire, it could be for severe weather, it could be for emergency evacuation. An emergency bag with, some diapers and wipes and formula and some bottled water that is only used in the event of an emergency. Now make sure that, like with the formula, it doesn't expire and that it stays fresh and everything. But if you can have that emergency bag available, just like in the other classrooms, I had mentioned puppets and books and things like that. For infant toddler teachers, yes, something with some diapers and wipes and those type of things would be very helpful. When you're deciding on a relocation site, make sure that this is in your parent handbook. Parents are aware in the event of a relocation, they need to know where to find their children. I always recommend that you have at least two relocation sites, one that is close to your facility and another one that is at least 10 miles away. All right. And the reason why I say that is if you have a significant event that is only affecting your facility, then evacuating to a location close by is going to be fine for you. But like the chemical spill that I had talked about earlier, if I'm having to evacuate my school because of a chemical spill, probably the entire town is evacuating, not just my school. So, if normally our relocation site is the library across the street, I'm not going to be able to go there, So that's why I say designate a site close by and then one at least 10 miles away in the event of a situation where the whole town is evacuating, okay? And wherever you're designating as your relocation site, they need to know you're coming. So make sure you call and ask them, is it okay if we come to your place in the event of an evacuation? And a lot of times, y'all, we use other childcare facilities. So, call some friends up that that, are 10 miles away or whatnot, and put each other down as your emergency relocation site or something like that. All right. And make sure you're doing drills, but if you're lucky enough that you've never had to evacuate, good for you. That's always the ultimate goal right there. Now, some of you are saying we don't transport. This is very important for you then, because you're really going to have to come up with a plan that if you have to evacuate, what do you do if you don't have buses or vans? How are you going to get those children to a safe location? That's the purpose behind coming up with this plan. All right. Now, once again, contact your first responders in your area. They may already have a plan for you, that they're going to send buses, or they're going to send, some city transportation vehicles to help you evacuate. So that's why, again, it's very helpful to reach out to them. But it might be in a severe situation that you stuff children in employees' cars. All right. Now that's an extreme situation only. All right. But that's the reason why you want to come up with a plan. All right. Fire, we've kind of already talked about a little bit, but we'll go ahead and talk about it again. Make sure you're aware of your primary and secondary exit. Make sure that once you get the children to the safe location, that you have something to keep them entertained and calm. Grab your sign in and out sheet, grab your emergency binder. Infants we talked about, put them in the evacuation crib, roll them out of there. There needs to be a designated person, usually the director, that will walk the building to ensure that every single child has exited the building, and that you do not enter the building until you have been cleared by the fire department to do so. All right, that's important right there. I know of a program that a toddler had pulled the fire alarm, so it was not a planned drill. Toddler pulled the fire alarm, and the fire alarm went off. They evacuated the building. The fire department came out. Well, when the fireman was walking around the building to check everything out and make sure that things were safe, they found an infant in a crib that was left in the room. All right. Y'all, there were criminal charges filed against the teacher. There were criminal charges filed against the director. All right. If it would have been a real fire, that child would have not survived. All right. So very important that you have a designated person that walks that building and makes sure that everybody is accounted for. So once you do evacuate your classroom and you're taking your sign in and out sheet, you're taking your emergency binder, the first thing you're going to do when you get to your spot is take roll. Make sure that you've got every single child and you haven't left someone. If you do notice that you're missing someone, you need to immediately notify your administrator. All right? So, there you go. If you have a cook in your program, or an assistant director or a janitor or a maintenance person, always make sure that these people have assignments. We typically assign them to the infant room. All right. So if the fire alarm goes off, the cook will immediately run to the infant room and assist those teachers with the evacuation. All right. Because some age groups are going to be a little bit harder to evacuate. Your toddlers and twos, they're going to need some assistance. Okay. So those extra people that you have that are not counted in child staff ratio, make sure that they have an assignment. When that fire alarm goes off, you get back there. We're required to do fire drills 12 times a year, so once a month. I like to divide those up, 4 in the morning, 4 in the afternoon, and 4 at nap time. Yes, I said 4 at nap time, all right? But you want to make sure that you're practicing your fire drill during all different times of the day. Nap time is interesting because most studies will tell you that fires will typically break out when ovens are cooling off. Okay, well, that's nap time. And you typically have twice the number of children per nap time teacher, so they're going to need some assistance getting those kids out. So it's a good idea to practice during this time. Whenever I was a director, the way we used to do it is that I would plan half of the fire drills, and then my assistant director would plan the other half, all right? And we would do every other month. We wouldn't tell each other, because even as an administrator, we need to be drilled as well, all right? And so that's kind of the way I used to do it. I was visiting a program in Colleyville, Texas one time. I went out there to do an assessment for them. And I see on the teacher's calendar, you know, on Tuesday, April 30th, we're going to have a fire drill. Well, that kind of defeats the purpose when you tell them that you're going to have a fire drill, all right? The purpose is to catch people off guard. That's how we test it. So I thought that was kind of interesting on that one right there, all right? So there is your emergency preparedness. Now, once again, you are required to post your emergency preparedness plan in a prominent area where parents and other adults visiting your program can see your plan. Make sure this is also in your parent handbook, all right? Now, what you're going to post in a prominent area and what you're going to put in your parent handbook is going to be an abbreviated plan. You're not going to give every detail. So, example, in a lockdown or intruder situation, you're not going to put how you're going to notify your staff of a lockdown, what your crisis plan looks like, because it might be that parent that's coming in to cause harm. And if you give away your entire plan, then your program is no longer safe. You're going to share with the parents what needs to be shared, and that's it. All right? Need to know basis only. You know, in my experience, I've had to lock down programs, you know, a few times. You know, one time we had a high-speed chase that ended in our alleyway. Our dumpster actually stopped the car that was running from the police. And so when the police jump out of their cars, you know, they all jump out with their guns and everything. And I had a playground full of 3-year-olds. You know, so we had to lock down in that situation. Everything was fine. I had another situation where the Dallas SWAT team had some activity going on right across the street from our school. So it had nothing to do with us, but you know, here's all of these big black helicopters and vans, and they're guys in their armor, and it's all taking, you know, place right across the street from our school. You know, but other than that, the other times that I have locked down my facility has been when I've had to terminate a staff member, and the termination went really, really bad, and the person got very aggressive, and their behavior got to a point where we felt it was important to lock down the school. And parents, when parents become crazy and lose their mind, and we've had to lock down the school during a parent conference, you know, because we felt it was safe to do so. So you think about that, that's your most common reasons that you're probably going to do this. All right, let's shift gears now, and we're going to talk now about some preventing and controlling the spread of communicable diseases in your program. You know, kind of the things I want to talk about here is the interactions with the children while you're preventing the spread of illnesses, sanitizing and disinfecting, the importance of performing health checks. Y'all write this down. All right, write this down. The most important thing that you can do to prevent the spread of an illness is hand washing. Hand washing. Hand washing, all right? Very important right there. Diaper changing and toileting, responding to illnesses, and just overall health practices, all right? Now, you know, again, this is something that we've become experts at over the past year, dealing with the pandemic, is preventing the spread of illnesses. The interesting thing is that, you know, I've been saying this for 20 years now. I've been saying that, you know, our child care minimum standards here in Texas, all right, our child care minimum standards are actually pretty awesome. Go over and read the chapter on health practices. They're actually fantastic. And it was interesting to me that, when the CDC issued the enhanced health protocols to prevent the spread of COVID-19, pretty much everything that the CDC recommended, we were already doing. All right. So, especially here in Texas, we didn't have to do much more than what was already being required from us. All right. So, follow your normal health practices, your hand washing, your sanitizing and disinfecting, your diaper changing, techniques and protocols. That is the best thing to do, and you're going to be just fine. All right. Now, when you are trying to prevent the spread of illnesses, we want to do this in a way that does not scare or make the children feel anxious. All right. Now, kind of going back to a lot of our basic trainings right there, children must feel safe before they can behave. Children must feel safe before they can learn. All right. Same thing with adults. Adults must feel safe before they can meet expectations. So, when you're cleaning and disinfecting your program, you want to do it in a way that you're not scaring the children or making them feel anxious. That was one of my big concerns at the beginning of the pandemic, is what, this was going to do to the interaction of the children, and was it going to cause some anxiety with some of the kids. It was amazing to me how quickly the children adapted to adults wearing masks right there. But some of you may have noticed, and I was so happy to see in March of 2021 that the CDC recognized this, that if those of you that do work with children that have signs and symptoms of a special need, the mask can be very hard for those kids right there. And the CDC actually recognized that, so that's important. When you're preventing the spread of illnesses and diseases, you want to make sure that whatever chemical you're using to sanitize and disinfect, you're going to make sure that you follow the manufacturer's instructions exactly as written. All right. And you want to make sure you're following the manufacturer's instructions for sanitizing. So if you're using an alternate chemical in your program, you're using a chemical that you're buying from a different company, you got to make sure that there are instructions for sanitizing on that. Otherwise, if there are not instructions for sanitizing, then you got to go down to the old 4-step process that we have followed for 30 years now. Wash it with soap and water, rinse it with clear water, soak it or spray it with a disinfectant solution, and allow it to air dry. That's the 4-step process. All right. If there are instructions for sanitizing, then you're going to follow the manufacturer's instructions. This has been good because when I say soak it or spray it with a disinfectant solution, you got to do that for 2 minutes. But, some of the chemicals that we use in our programs have a 1-minute contact time. So that's awesome because that's going to cut down your disinfecting time in half. All right. But very important that you make sure that you're following the manufacturer's instructions. If you're using a bleach product, if you're still using a bleach product, then obviously you'll follow the 4-step process at that point. All right. Don't recommend that you use bleach products. I know some of you are still using bleach to do your disinfecting. There's so much research now that how harmful this is, especially with children and adults with asthma, all right, that, it's causing a lot of problems, but I know some of you are using it. Back before the rules changed in 2016, the problem that we were running into is that the standards do say that you must use regular strength liquid household bleach. All right. And then you mix it accordingly. Well, you go to Walmart or you go to Kroger or you go to whatever retail establishment, the only thing that you're able to find on the shelf is concentrated bleach. If that word concentrated is on there, it's not regular strength liquid household bleach. So the concentrated part messes up the recipe. And that's the problem we were running into, is that ability to find regular strength liquid household bleach. So way back before 2016, we stopped using the bleach products and went to an alternate chemical. All right. If you're needing some suggestions on that right there, if you go to my website, timthetrainer.com, and go to sponsors, one of our sponsors is Share Corporation, Greg the chemical guy. He's got some fantastic chemicals that will help prevent the spread of illnesses in your program and keep it nice and healthy. All right. When you're doing health checks for your children, again, even before the pandemic, I have always been an advocate for doing health checks. Now, you do need to have this in your parent handbook that you do health checks whenever you come in. But when a child comes in, you're going to discreetly, in a way that does not shame or frustrate the child, look for breathing difficulty, severe coughing, discharge from the nose, changes in skin color, bumps or bruises that were not there the day before. All right, and right now, of course, we're taking temperatures. If you notice any of these, you need to immediately ask the parent about it. All right, and then for bumps and bruises, those type of things, you want to make sure you document. All right, but ask the parent right away. Don't wait until this afternoon to ask them. If you wait until this afternoon and say, oh, by the way, I noticed that, when you dropped off Casey this morning, that she had a bump on her arm, or a bruise on her arm, and then the parent's going to go, no, she didn't. That happened today while she was here. So you want to make sure you ask about it right away, okay? And then document. One of the enhanced health practices that we've been following for the past year that we will probably continue to do indefinitely is not only do health checks on the children, but also do a health check on the adult that is dropping off the child. If you have an adult that is showing signs and symptoms of an illness, they've already exposed that child. And then when you accept the child into your program, you're now spreading that illness throughout your classroom. All right. So, and we're going to continue to do health checks and screenings on the adults dropping off and picking up in addition to the children. All right. So, there you go. Yeah, Erica, do not wait until dismissal time to ask about those things. All right. Of course, we all are experts on washing hands now. All right. So turn on the water, wet your hands, scrub it with soap and water. 20 to 30 seconds is how long we want to wash our hands. Rinse the hands with clear water, turn off the water, and dry the hands. I'm a very big person on visuals. I love visuals. Visuals never get tired of telling us what to do. So in your hand washing area, make sure you have some visuals of the 6 steps to hand washing. Your young children probably can't read, so you want to have those visuals with each of the steps. And I like to use pictures of the children currently in the classroom so that they can associate with them, all right? And so every year we're updating our visuals, especially on our routines and rituals right there, all right? I think especially right now, a discharge from the nose, definitely want to mention that to the parent. Now, right now, the parent's saying, oh, it's allergies. We're still excluding, all right? Because I can't tell you how many situations I have heard about where a parent says, oh, it's allergies, oh, it's allergies, oh, it's allergies. Oh, they just tested positive for COVID. And now the kid's been in your program for 3 days and have exposed everybody. You just can't take any chances right now, all right? All right. Hand sanitizer, if you're using hand sanitizer in your program, it is prohibited for children under 24 months of age. For children over 24 months, you can use hand sanitizer only when soap and water is not available, all right? If soap and water is available, that's always your go-to. So hand sanitizer is when it's not available, all right? Now, I know we've been using a lot of hand sanitizer over the last year. I'm not the biggest fan of it. There's a lot of research that talks about, hand sanitizer can sometimes kill too much. And there is a certain amount of bacteria and stuff that we need to have on our skin and on our hands to protect us from other illnesses. And hand sanitizer can actually open you up to getting sicker. All right. So, don't overuse it. All right. Don't overuse it. Make sure you keep it out of the reach of children. All right. At all times. If you do have it for the kids over 24 months. On diaper changing and toileting to help prevent the spread of illnesses and diseases in your program, make sure that you wash your hands before and after the diaper change. Even if you are wearing gloves, you still need to wash your hands before and after the diaper change. Make sure you're washing the infant's hand as well. All right, so there's a couple of different ways that you can do it. If the child is old enough and mature enough that you can hold them over the sink and do the 6 steps to hand washing with them, it's actually a very intimate moment. It's a sensory activity. It's actually a really good moment for you and that child. If the child is too young or it's more danger to hold them over the sink than to wash their hands, then we've done it with squirt bottles. All right, so we'll have a squirt bottle with some soapy water that we'll squirt on the infant's hands, rub them together, and then another squirt bottle with rinse water that will spray and rinse it off, and then use paper towels to dry their hands. All right, you can do that way with those younger ones. All right. Now, as far as wearing gloves is concerned, as far as licensing is concerned, you're only required to wear gloves when you're dealing with bodily fluid that could potentially have blood in it. All right. My whole thought on this is that pretty much any bodily fluid that you're dealing with could potentially have blood. And you can't always see the blood. All right. Sometimes you're going to have a situation where you can't see the blood. So in my programs, we require people to wear gloves anytime they're dealing with bodily fluid. That's just best case scenario right there. All right. So keep that in mind. If you have a caregiver that has an open wound, so they have an injury to their body, make sure that that is covered up. We don't want to get them exposed. All right. Make sure you're sanitizing the diaper changing table after each use. If you are if you're changing diapers on a number of children in a consecutive manner, then you can use a non-absorbent paper liner that is disposed of after each diaper change, and then you sanitize the diaper changing table after that. So if you're using like the butcher paper or exam paper, then you'll just change that out after each child, and then you'll do your sanitizing afterwards. I personally like for you to sanitize the diaper changing table after each child. And if you're using a chemical like Oracle or Cavicide that has a 1-minute contact time, then you can change those 8 babies in an adequate amount of time and then use proper sanitation. All right. Make sure that you're putting soiled diapers in a sanitary manner, that you're putting them in a trash can with a lid on it that children do not have access to. We're going to talk about handling, disposing, and storing hazardous waste at the end of the workshop today. So just a little preview of that one. Make sure that you have a trash can that has a lid on it that children do not have access to, and those soiled or dirty diapers are being placed in that trash can. All right. My recommendation here is that it is a trash can with a foot pedal that you can open and close the trash can with the foot, and you don't have to touch the lid. All right. That is best case scenario right there. All right. Just kind of a little off topic right here. But we actually have some Dynasty is the chemical. It's called Dynasty, and again, Greg the chemical guy is who we get it from. But Dynasty kills urine smells, and so it's made to spray lock on bathroom floors to keep your bathrooms from smelling like urine. But we actually put the Dynasty in small squirt bottles, and so anytime we're changing a diaper, both urine and poop, just one small squirt inside of the diaper before you wrap it up and put it in your trash can, and it keeps your building from smelling like dirty diapers. So I love using that right there. Okay. Okay, I was just kind of reading some of the comments. All right. So again, make sure that you've got your illness exclusion policy. I like for y'all to follow the illness exclusion policy that is in the child care minimum standards. That children are excluded from your program. They must be fever-free, symptom-free, without medication for 24 hours. Make sure you share this with your parents. Make sure that it is followed. Exceptions, making an exception will always bite you in the butt. All right. So make sure that it is followed. Now, during the pandemic, we have enhanced that policy, and we've been doing 72 hours of exclusion. That's one of those that we're probably going to stick to the 72 hours for a while now. All right. But the key right here to responding to the illness and excluding children, they must be symptom-free, fever-free, without medication. So make sure that you're addressing that part of it. Okay. Peggy saying that diapers go immediately to the dumpster after changing. You know what? If you've got the ability to do that, you've got the staffing to do that, I think that's fantastic. Now, diarrhea, absolutely, that one goes straight to the dumpster because that will smell up your entire program right there. All right. If the parent comes to you with a note from a healthcare professional, and this is outlined in the child care minimum standards, the note has to specifically say that the child is no longer contagious, all right, or has to specifically state what the healthcare professional did in order for the child to return to care. If you have a parent that brings in a note from a healthcare professional that simply says, Marla was seen in my office and can return to care, that ain't good enough. All right, so you're going to have a frustrated parent because you're going to have to send them away with that note. Sorry, this isn't good enough. We need more than Marla was seen in my office and can return to care. I need to know what magical thing you did that made her no longer contagious or no longer ill. All right, so this is in the minimum standards. It has to specifically say that the child is no longer contagious or state what was done that the child was able to return. All right. Make sure that you're following your illness exclusion for the adults in your program as well. All right. So whatever illness exclusion plan you have for your children needs to also be done by adults. And I know that staffing is tough and we need adults in our building, but we don't need sick adults. All right. Now, if you are a caregiver and you're getting sick a lot in your program, then working in early education may not be the best career choice for you. We need to be able to stay well and healthy also, all right? But if you're getting sick too much, then this may not be the best place for you. Sorry, it is what it is. With bloodborne pathogens and universal precautions, y'all might want to write this down. Blanca, that's under the illness exclusion part of it in the minimum standards. I don't have the page numbers or the standard numbers in front of me right now, but it's under the health chapter under illness exclusion. And it'll talk about a note from the healthcare professional. Universal precautions. All right, so write this down because you're going to see it on your worksheet later on. Universal precautions is basically wash your hands and wear your gloves. All right, wash your hands and wear your gloves. But universal precautions is basically you assume everyone has an illness or a disease. You treat everybody as if they have an infectious disease. All right, and that's how you keep yourself safe right there. So, for example, when we do bloodborne pathogens training, we talk about the Privacy Act and that there are certain illnesses that are protected by law, such as AIDS and HIV. All right, certain forms of hepatitis. All right, that the child or the parent of the child or the employee does not have to tell you that they are HIV positive or whatnot. Otherwise, they would be discriminated against. Okay, and sometimes people get really upset about that. And they're like, hey, if I am working with someone who is HIV positive, I think I should have a right to know. I need to protect myself. Well, again, they're going to be treated differently right there. But when I have people that get really upset about that and kind of make a big deal about it, I'm going to say, well, let's paint a different picture. All right. I'm willing to bet that many people watching this webinar right now have probably worked with someone or been around someone that was HIV positive, and that person didn't even know it yet. All right. They were positive and they haven't even been diagnosed yet. That's why we follow universal precautions. Now, with the pandemic, this has been so applicable, and I'm willing to bet that 99.9% of the people watching this webinar over the past year has been exposed to an individual that was positive for COVID-19, and that person didn't even know they were positive yet. All right. So that's where universal precautions is so extremely important. All right. You treat everybody as if they have an infectious disease. All right. So we want to be aware of any type of broken skin, both on the child and on the adult. So an open sore, a cut, acne. All right. Dry skin right there. We need to be aware of that. Make sure that you're using a lot of lotion. You're keeping your skin nice and moisturized so that you don't have dry or cracked skin, because you could be infected that way. All right. But wear your gloves if you're handling that bodily fluid. Band-aids over, you got some bad acne and you had a big blowout right there. Put a Band-aid on top of it. It's not a beauty contest. We're not trying to fall in love with people, at work. So who cares about that Band-aid? Whatever it's going to take to keep yourself healthy right there. All right. And if you do get bodily fluid on an open sore, then you want to immediately wash it with soap and water. All right. And then document that. All right. And so y'all can go back to my website and go to the Bloodborne Pathogens training if you want more information on that. All right, let's shift gears now and let's talk about immunizations. All right. So, of course, here in the state of Texas and most states out there have immunization requirements for children to attend licensed childcare. All right. So they need to be on schedule and receiving their immunizations as applicable. All right. If you have a family that chooses not to receive immunizations due to their beliefs and convictions, and those beliefs and convictions are currently being followed, you cannot discriminate against that individual. That is a federally protected class. All right. So you could actually be sued for discrimination if you don't allow this person into your program. All right. Sometimes people get this backwards because they're kind of like, oh, I need to know if I'm around a child or a person that has not received immunizations. Well, the risk is on that person. All right. That person that has not received immunizations is the one taking the risk. If you have received your immunizations or the other children have received their immunizations, they're fine. All right. They're protected. So the person not choosing to receive immunizations, they're the ones taking the risk. Now, the only exception to this conversation, of course, are your infants and young toddlers who have not been fully vaccinated yet. That's where, probably the biggest concern is right there. If you have a family that is choosing not to receive immunizations due to their belief or conviction, then your program is going to get a notarized affidavit and have that on file. All right. So you can find a list of the current immunization requirements on the Texas Department of Health and Human Services website. I also have this posted on my website. If you go to the training on immunizations, I have the chart that is posted right there. All right. The main thing that I want to address is that what can we do in our program to help support the children after they receive a shot? Because y'all might remember being a child and when you got a vaccine, it hurt. It was uncomfortable, several of you have probably received the COVID vaccine, and some people have side effects, some people don't, I was one of the lucky people that my arm was a little sore, and the next day I felt like I was ran over by a truck, but 12 hours later I was fine. and it was really nothing right there. But my arm did hurt right there. Now imagine being 2 years old. It's uncomfortable, right? So, what you want to do, what you're going to see after a child receives an immunization is there might be some redness, some pain, some swelling where that child received that shot. They're going to cry and be fussy because they're uncomfortable right there. And they may have a fever or a rash from some immunizations that they received, all right? So what you can do to help support that child right there, let them rest. They're going to need some rest right there. Give them, if you have a note from a healthcare professional, some Tylenol or some pain reliever to help with the soreness right there. If the child is over the age of 2 and you have permission from the parent. So make sure we're going to talk about administering medication here a little bit. So we got to make sure we're following those. Make sure they got lots of liquids to drink. We don't want them to dehydrate. So they're going to have a lot of water to drink right there. And then, of course, once the parent gets them home, a nice lukewarm bath is always helpful for that child after they have received an immunization. When should we contact a healthcare professional? If a child has received an immunization and you feel like there are side effects that are a danger. If the child has been crying for more than 3 hours, so they're uncomfortable and they're crying for more than 3 hours, probably need to get a healthcare professional involved at that point. All right. If the child is complaining of a lot of pain, so more than just soreness or uncomfortable, but they're complaining of a lot of pain. If they have a fever that lasts more than 48 hours, if they look sick, so sometimes you just look like you've been, whooped right there. The area that the shot was given has been red for a while and is swollen more than 2 inches or the size of a $50. That would be a concern right there. Of course, seizures or convulsions, we want to contact a healthcare professional. If the child is sleepy and does not want to wake up or they don't want to eat, all right, we want to make sure that we're contacting a healthcare professional right there. I got a comment that because you're a private school and you receive 0 funding, you were told that you can require fully vaccinated students only. That's incorrect. Whether or not you're a private school and where your funding comes from is irrelevant in this conversation. You are operating a private business in the United States of America. Therefore, you are required to follow the Constitution and you are required to follow our federally protected classes. And belief and convictions is part of creed, and you can be sued for discrimination. So just to answer that comment right there. But whether you're for-profit, non-profit, faith-based, non-faith-based, no matter where your funding comes from is completely irrelevant in this conversation. All right? There you go. I want to talk a little bit about, this is kind of a middle-of-the-road conversation right here, but children with diabetes, and we're seeing a very large increase in the number of children that we are caring for that have diabetes, all right? And so I want y'all to be aware of when their blood sugar is too high and when their blood sugar is too low, all right? High blood sugar. So when a child has high blood sugar, they're feeling tired. They have excessive urination, so they're going to the bathroom a whole lot. They're irritable, all right? Again, they're very thirsty. And then the child is complaining of a blurred vision. These are all signs that their blood sugar is too high. And you want to contact that parent and get instructions from the healthcare professional on what to do in that situation. If their blood sugar is too low, all right, so they don't have enough sugar in their system for their cells to be working well. The child is feeling tired, they have a pale skin, they're irritable, increased hunger in the child, once again the blurred vision, sweating a lot, so they're having a lot of sweatness, all right. The child is complaining of dizziness, headaches, and they're shaking hands. Their hands are shaking. These are all signs of low blood sugar. If you have a child in your program that is hypoglycemic and they have diabetes, I would make sure you have documentation from a healthcare professional on what first aid to administer or what protocols to follow when they have both high blood sugar and low blood sugar. But you want to make sure you've got those instructions on file so that you can follow them accordingly for that particular child. All right. But I wanted to address, those situations as well. All right, as part of our preventing and controlling the spread of diseases. Now, they're not going to spread the diabetes, but I want y'all to be able to take care of that child. Sometimes we have children with Epipens, and part of your first aid training should always include the administration of Epipens. If you go to the pharmacy, you can typically get a tester that you can test administering an EpiPen. Go buy yourself a cantaloupe or a watermelon, and you can test the EpiPen administration on those two items right there. But basically, when you have a child or an adult that goes into shock and you need to inject an EpiPen, you're going to grab the EpiPen, form a fist around it. All right, position the orange end about 10 centimeters away from the outer mid-thigh. All right, swing and jab the orange tip in at a 90-degree angle and hold it in place for 10 seconds. All right, and then you're going to remove the EpiPen after 10 seconds. Administering an EpiPen is considered a reasonable accommodation to a special need or to a disability. So it is protected under the Americans with Disability Act, meaning you've got to do this, all right? If you fail to administer an EpiPen or you refuse to administer an EpiPen, that could be an ADA violation for both you and your program. All right, possible side effects after you administer an EpiPen injection. There could be a headache, there could be vomiting if the individual is feeling weak, if they're feeling dizzy or pale, sweating, anxiety and nervousness, if they're shaking, once again, their hands are shaking, if they are really aware of their heartbeat, and sometimes y'all feel that way, like you feel like your heart is about to beat out of your chest right there, if it's an abnormal heartbeat, all right, or if the individual has difficult breathing. Those are all possible side effects of an EpiPen. Now, normally, when you administer an EpiPen, you're also calling 911, and you've got emergency personnel that is on their way. So if there are possible side effects to administering an EpiPen, you're typically already going to have a healthcare professional on site, or you're on your way to receive emergency medical treatment. But if not, these are the things that you want to look for, and if you do see side effects, you want to contact the healthcare professional immediately. All right? So there you go. I got a question right here. Good question. Are we supposed to have the EpiPens inside of the classroom? I actually had a giant debate with a licensing supervisor over this very topic one time. Any of y'all that have experience working with an EpiPen, you know this, but you have a very short period of time to administer that EpiPen when someone goes into shock. If you don't administer that EpiPen in the adequate amount of time, it could be ineffective. And it's going to be different in each situation. But you do have a very limited amount of time to administer that EpiPen. So if you're in a pre-K classroom that's in the back of the building and you have all the EpiPens up in the front office locked up, and Gladys goes into shock, and if I'm the teacher and I call the front office and hey, I need Gladys's EpiPen, hurry, and that person in the front office may or may not be up there to answer that call, but even if they do answer the call, then they've got to run to the closet, dig through that box, find Gladys's EpiPen, and then run it back to the classroom. You've probably missed your opportunity, all right? And that child is at a lot of risk now. Or I want y'all to think about the reason why a lot of children have EpiPens. Two of the biggest reasons why a child would have an EpiPen would be ants and bees, all right? Well, where's that going to happen? Where are they going to get bit by an ant or stung by a bee? Out on the playground. Now we have even more obstacles on getting that child their EpiPen in a sufficient amount of time. By the time you're on the playground, you got to call the front desk. You don't have an intercom system out there typically. All right, you got to open the door and scream, or a walkie-talkie once again. All right, then they got to run it out there to the playground. You've missed your opportunity. So to answer your question, Gladys, yes, all right, it is best practice. It is best practice for the EpiPens to be in the classroom. They still need to be locked up out of the reach of children, but they need to be accessible by the caregiver so that they can be administered in the adequate amount of time. There is no rule in minimum standards on where these are stored. All right. So this is where, like I said, I had a big debate with a licensing supervisor once because they were saying they have to be stored in the office. There's nothing that says that. All right. Number one, there's nothing that says that. Number two, these kids are being placed at risk. All right. So I want y'all to take that into consideration right there. All right. Very good. Very good. And y'all know that we did have a piece of legislation that was passed here in Texas in 2019. This just went into effect in 2021, that you are allowed to have a policy now on having a generic EpiPen on site that can be used in the event that someone goes into shock. And this piece of legislation was specifically drafted for licensed child care facilities, shopping malls, and amusement parks. It was weird that we were lumped into that category, but there can be a generic low-dose EpiPen on site that can be used on individuals in the event of them going into shock. And so you get to draft that policy if you choose to do so. All right? So there you go. And as far as the playground is concerned, and carrying the EpiPen onto the playground in a fanny pack or a backpack or something, I'm going to let y'all explore your program, your building premises, and see if you need to do that or if having it in the classroom is adequate. I don't know where your classrooms are located in reference to the playground. So you're going to have to make a decision on that one within your program. All right. But if your playground is a distance away from your classroom, probably a good idea to have an emergency bag that has these items in it that stay locked up in a cabinet out of the reach of children when you're in the classroom, and when you go outside, you take that bag with you. All right, and that's what we do at many of my programs. All right, administering medication. All right, if you choose to administer medication in your program, you need to make sure you have policies on how this is done. All right. Now, a big trend in our industry is a lot of programs are going to a no medication policy. If you choose to have a no medication policy, meaning if the child requires a medication, the parent has to give it, remember that there are certain medications that are protected under the Americans with Disability Act, such as Epipens, we've already talked about, blood sugar testing for children with diabetes, we've already talked about, breathing machines, all right, and then behavioral management drugs. These are all protected under the Americans with Disability Act as a reasonable accommodation to a special need. So we are required to do those 4 items, all right? Otherwise, you're going to draft up a medication policy that is in the best interest of your program. Administering medication is a big risk, all right? You've got a big risk of the wrong medication being given to the wrong child, the wrong dose being given to the child. There's just a lot of risk whenever you administer medication. And like anything else, we want to try to reduce risk as much as possible, all right? I'll give you an example of a policy that I like. We only administer medication that is prescribed to a child 3 or more times a day, and we will only administer the middle dose. I like that policy. If a medication is only administered once a day, the parent can do that at home. If the medication is administered twice a day, the parent can give it before they bring them in and once they get home. There should be no reason for your program to take on that risk. All right? It's usually because the parent wants us to be the bad guy and not them. Well, they just won't take it from me. Well, put your parent panties on and give them the medicine. All right? But just know you're taking on a big risk. And so that's why I like the policy. We only give out medication that is prescribed 3 or more times a day, and we're only going to give the middle dose. But even at that, if they're getting a medication 3 or more times a day, then you got to ask yourself, are they too sick to be in your program? So that question comes up right there. All right. So if you are administering medication, all right, there are 4 items that must be documented in your program, and y'all might want to write this down because you're going to see it again on your test or your worksheet here in a little bit. The child's name, okay, and the medication must be prescribed to that child, not a sibling or someone else. The medication has to be prescribed for that child. The name of the medication, the date and time and the amount of medication given, and the employee's name that administered the medication. All right, so those are the 4 things that must be documented in your program: the child's name, the name of the medication, the date and time and the dosage given, and the full name of the employee that gave the medication right there. So again, some common pitfalls, some issues that we see from time to time is that parents will bring in a sibling's medication. You need to look out for that. Sometimes the parents will change the dose. All right, you can't do that. The medication must be given exactly as prescribed. The parent cannot change the dose. All right, and then look out for expired medication. All right, you can get cited by licensing for having expired medication in your program. My recommendation to you, if you are choosing to administer medication in your program, is that it is sent home every day. All right, and I know that's a little bit of a pain, and the parent's probably going to complain about that. You don't want medication left in your program. If you do allow that, the next thing you know, you've got this giant box of old medication that the children are no longer taking, and then as soon as it expires and licensing comes in, you're going to be cited. All right, so I like for that medication to be sent home every day. Know if the medication needs to be refrigerated or not, and if you are accepting a medication, it needs to be refrigerated. It needs to be refrigerated away from food, all right? So the food that you're preparing in your program, for those of you that prepare food, make sure that medication is being stored away from the food that you are preparing. So typically we have a completely separate refrigerator, usually one of those little college dorm refrigerators. That is our medication refrigerator right there. All right. And so the other piece of advice that I give on this one is that have designated people that have been trained to administer medication, and those are the only ones that administer it. So typically director and assistant director are the only 2 people that administer medications. You want to keep as few hands as possible on this because of the risk. All right, so you don't want a whole lot of people administering that medication. Of course, child care licensing has some really fantastic forms on their website. I recommend that you use licensing forms. That way there's no doubt on whether or not you've got the right information. You can download this from their website. The main thing is making sure that parents are signing the medication in every single day. All right, if it is a maintenance medication like behavioral management or breathing machine, then they can do the medication that is ongoing. And there is a separate form for that right there. You can download that off of licensing's website as well. I do recommend that, when you have your medication binder and you have your medication log in your binder, I recommend sheet protectors and each individual child has their own log, that you're not using one log for everybody. The reason for this is that if you give that parent that medication binder and they're going to sign the child in, they can see what everyone else is taking, all right? And y'all know how nosy they are. They're going to sit there and look and go, oh, well, looky here. Well, Melissa is on amoxicillin again. This is the third time this month Melissa's been taking amoxicillin. She's the one getting everyone sick, you know? They're nosy and they're looking at other people's private medical information, which is a violation of the Privacy Act, all right? So I recommend each individual child has their own medication log that's in your binder, covered with a sheet protector or whatnot, all right? So that way you can keep it private. All right, that's what I recommend on that one. All right, let's talk now. We're moving right along. This is good. Let's talk now about preventing and responding to food allergies. Y'all know when this rule came out in 2016, it was a beautiful day. There was dancing in the streets when this rule came out in 2016. So let's go back to prior to September of 2016. A best practice that many of us followed prior to 2016 is that anytime a child had, an allergy in the program, we posted an allergy alert. And it was posted with, a picture of the child's name, the food that they were allergic to, all of that good stuff. And we've been using allergy alerts, for years. And we have them posted up in the classroom, so that people can see them, and also posted in the kitchen for whoever's preparing food. Well, prior to 2016, those of us that were doing this were technically breaking the law, all right, because that was a violation of privacy, where we were exposing that child's medical condition to the public, all right? Now, we had written permission from the parent to post these items, so that gave us a lot of protection right there. That was very, very critical that you had that written permission from the parent, all right? But sometimes you got to weigh out risk, and you got to decide what is the greater risk, all right? Me posting that child's medical information to the public, or that child getting a peanut product and dying in my classroom. What is the greater risk? All right. I'm going to take the risk by posting this allergy alert up here. All right. Now, when in September of 2016, when the federal government, not the state of Texas or the state of Nevada, the federal government said we are now required to post food allergies, we're no longer breaking the law, all right? So that was beautiful for us right then, okay? So we'll kind of talk about this right here, all right? So when we talk about food allergies, 1 in 13 children in the United States of America has some type of food allergy. 1 in 13, all right? And y'all are very aware of this, that it's very, very common for, several children in your classrooms to have some type of food allergy. So we've got, these food allergy alerts posted, kind of all over our classroom. And some of you have multiple allergy alerts in your classroom right here. Now, what I like to recommend with these allergy alerts, of course, you're going to post them in the classroom where food is served, where food is prepared. If you're in a rare situation where you don't have any food allergies in your classroom, then I post one of these that say, we currently do not have any food allergies in this classroom. All right? That way, when licensing comes in, it's very clear that you don't have any allergies in that classroom. If they have to ask, hey, I noticed that you don't have any food allergies posted. Do you have children with food allergies? Oh, no, we don't have any right now. Well, do you really not have any, or are you just making that up because you don't have them posted? All right. If I have a sign posted that says we currently do not have any food allergies in this classroom, it makes it clear. All right. But given the statistics, 1 in 13 children, that's roughly 6 million children in this country have food allergies. You're probably going to have something. All right. So what is required by child care licensing is that we have a food allergy emergency plan. And there is a document, and I actually have a sample on my website, timthetrainer.com, under documents. I have a sample food allergy emergency plan, all right? So you need to have the child's name, the food that the child is allergic to, signs and symptoms of the child having a reaction, all right? So possible symptoms if the child is exposed to this food. And then what first aid must be administered. So the steps to take if the child has an allergic reaction. Now, when I go into programs and I look at these allergy alerts that are posted, on the wall, when it talks about, what first aid must be administered or what steps to take if the child has an allergic reaction, contact the office or call the parents or give an alternative fruit is not first aid, all right? If you've got an allergy alert or a food allergy emergency plan posted, and that's what you have on there is contact parent or call office or give alternative, you could be cited, okay? You need to have what first aid must be administered or what steps do you take if the child has an allergic reaction, all right? This must be posted once again where food is prepared and where food is served, all right, in your program. Now, up in your front office or your lobby, wherever you have all of your required documents, your required postings, so like your compliance history and your license and your Keeping Children Safe poster, all of those required postings, there you're just going to have a summary of your food allergies. So currently we have the following food allergies in our program. We have an egg white, a strawberry, and a peanut butter, all right? So up in the office or the lobby, you don't have to give the children's name and the first aid and all of that stuff. It's just going to say, here's what we've got in our program right now. Now, back where food is prepared and where food is served, that's where you need to have the child's name, the food that they're allergic to, signs of a reaction, and what first aid must be administered. All right? So that's kind of the difference between the two different postings. All right. Now, I kind of am looking at some of the comments that are posting up here. Oops, I folded that bad. We also do something where we have dietary restrictions or preferences. So I typically have my food allergies with a red backing, but then I have my food preferences or dietary restrictions or intolerances with like a blue backing right here, all right? Because there is a difference between a food allergy and a food preference or an intolerance, all right? As a courtesy to the parents and to help our staff, meet the needs of the children, we do post the dietary restrictions or intolerances or preferences, but I put them on a different color piece of paper. All right, so we know the difference between the allergy and the preference. All right, make sure that you're not serving that food that the child is allergic to. Make sure that they're not near the food. Sometimes the child just can be within a certain distance of the food and have a reaction to it. So again, make sure that you're very, very aware. Now, this is one of those things where it's very specific to your program. So if you're a brand new employee just coming into your school, you want to immediately ask, who are the children that have food allergies? Show me which children have food allergies and what food are they allergic to, all right? So that way we can keep the children away from it. And it might be that no one in that classroom gets served that food depending on how severe the allergy is, all right? But you want to make yourself immediately aware of those individuals, okay? Common food allergies that we most likely are to see in our licensed programs: eggs, peanuts or nuts, chocolate, fish, cow's milk, wheat, strawberries, soybean, corn, and shellfish. Those are the most common food allergies that we see in our licensed programs. There's definitely many, many more, but there you go. When you have the food allergy emergency plan completed by the parent, it does need to be signed by a healthcare professional. This is another rule that we celebrated back in 2016. I don't know about you, but half of the children in my programs that had food allergies were suddenly cured when we were required to get a signature from the healthcare professional. All right. That's important because sometimes we have parents that want to self-diagnose their child. So there you go. And not only do you need to get the signature from the healthcare professional, what I also like to get from them are what substitutions need to be made. All right. So if a child cannot have an egg product, what substitution does the healthcare professional recommend? All right. And the reason why we do that is for the nutritional value, because we still want to make sure that the child is receiving the nutrition that is required by the myplate.gov guidelines. So I like that. All right. Yeah, and it's the same thing like with infant sleep safety guidelines and for children that needed a sleep exception form. The ones that need to be sleeping upright, in a swing or a bouncy seat and not laying flat on the crib. That has to be signed by a healthcare professional now. Once that became a requirement, half of our children were suddenly cured. It was amazing right there. What do you typically see whenever a child is having a reaction to a food allergy? The child's lips, their tongue, or their mouth will swell up. That's the most common reaction. So they're going to start talking weird, or their lips are going to get big. Diarrhea or vomiting is the second most common reaction that we see. Rash, so they break out in hives, or they break out in a rash all over their body. They start having a hard time breathing, all right, or they complain of a sore throat and runny nose. So those are the most common side effects or reactions. But again, this is going to be listed on each individual child's food allergy emergency plan. All right. If you have a child or an adult, it could be an adult too, that does have an allergic reaction to a food allergy, once again, stay calm. My state dictates your state. All right. Stay calm. Get out your emergency kit and check for an EpiPen. If there is an EpiPen for that child on site, you're going to administer the EpiPen as directed, and we've kind of already talked about that. Grab it, make a firm fist, all right? Strike it at a 90-degree angle, have it in there for 10 seconds, all right? And again, it needs to be done in the appropriate amount of time. Call 911, call the family, and if possible, call the child's healthcare professional. All right. Partner with your parents. All right. Be consistent with communication. There is some scientific proof out there that a lot of children grow out of their allergies. So if you have a child that has grown out of that allergy, make sure that you're aware of that. Otherwise, sharing your menu with your families, kind of keeping an eye on a possible food that's going to be prepared and served that could have an allergy, and talk about the possible substitutions prior to that food being prepared and served. All right. So again, lots of communication with the family right there. Keep a log. All right. I'm really big on logs. I'm going to share with y'all a cleaning log that we've got, right there. I've also got one over here I was going to share, a significant event log. So y'all know the golden rule with documentation. If it's not written down, it didn't happen. So keep a log of what the children are eating and what's making them sick. I talk about this a lot when I do trainings on supporting children with signs and symptoms of a special need or a disability. Most of the children that we care for in our licensed programs have signs and symptoms of a special need or disability, but they haven't been diagnosed yet. And that's what makes it really tough for us, is that we're dealing with children that have not been diagnosed yet. Well, when we talk about food allergies, it's no different. Okay? You could have, or you most likely will have, a child in your classroom that does have a food allergy that hasn't been diagnosed yet. So keep a log. If you start noticing a child getting ill or having some reactions, keep a log of what they are eating, what type of reactions they're having, and help that parent and that healthcare professional put their finger on what they're allergic to. All right. But we're serving 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and afternoon snack in most situations. You're probably going to be a very critical part of helping that child get diagnosed and getting the care that they need for that food allergy. All right. There you go. Now, again, intolerances are different than food allergies. So you could have a child that has an intolerance to a food. Some common intolerance symptoms would be bloating, belching, constipation, diarrhea, bad breath, stomach pain, cramping, vomiting, acid reflux or heartburn, irritability, just that foggy brain, I don't really know where I'm at today, headaches and an itching, your body itching. These are all signs and symptoms of intolerances. So once again, if you have a child in your program and you're seeing some of these things, make sure that you're documenting that and sharing it with the parent. All right? So there you go. There's a wonderful resource if you're needing some additional information on preventing and responding to food allergies. Go to www.foodallergy.org. Foodallergy.org. And that is the food allergy research and education people. They've got some great resources on their website to help you and your program and that family out. All right? There you go. So the main thing is just be very, very aware of who has a food allergy, be aware of those signs and symptoms of a reaction, and be prepared to administer the applicable first aid when possible. All right, how we doing? We're hanging in there, right? We got 2 more topics to go. We got this. All right, and the last one's short and quick, so because we've kind of already talked about it. All right, so the next topic we need to address in today's training is understanding our building premises. All right, now this one, once again, everyone's building is different. All right, so you've got to be familiar with your layout, your floor plan, be aware of emergency exits and entrances, be aware of blind spots where children can hide. All right, sometimes we have runners, kids that like to run out of the classroom. We need to know where to find them right there. But the main thing when we're understanding building premises is it is every single person's responsibility to keep your building safe and healthy for the children that are enrolled, the employees that are working there, and the parents that are coming in to pick up and drop off. It is not only the director's responsibility. It's not just their responsibility. We all have to work together as a team to keep our building safe. All right? And I want you all to keep in mind that, in a licensed child care facility, in an after-school program, we have a lot of wear and tear. All right? Our buildings take a beating on a daily basis. So our building premises can change from day to day. All right, our building premises can change from hour to hour. All right, and so we constantly need to be aware of our building premises and making sure that it's safe and healthy. I'm just going to quickly go over some of the most common items that we need to be aware of when we talk about building premises and understanding building premises. The first thing, obviously, is make sure that children are never left unattended, all right, so that children are always accounted for. So be aware of your blind spots, be aware of your surroundings at all time. If you are being sent into a classroom and it's a classroom you don't normally work in, before you take on the responsibility of that group of children, I would take 5 or 10 minutes to check the building premises, to check the layout of the classroom, all right, to look at the furniture and equipment, all right. Is there entrapment issues? Are there supervision issues? Before you take on the responsibility of that group, you want to make sure that you're in an environment that you can control. That's important, all right. Electrical outlets are covered with safety plugs, or do you have safety outlets installed in your building? This is one of the most commonly cited items when it comes to safety in building premises, is that electrical outlets are not covered, all right? We tend to want to plug in the CD player or move the CD player or whatever, and we take that plug off and then we don't put it back in, all right? So there you go. And of course, my biggest piece of advice on this one, those of you that are administrators watching this, invest in safety outlets so you don't have to worry about these plastic covers. But if you can't do that, your plastic covers need to be accessible right there. Electrical cords need to be out of the reach of children. So if you are plugging something in, you can't have a dangling cord, or you can't have an electrical cord stretched across the classroom, all right? So you need to be aware of that right there. They can pull, they can trip, they can stick it in their mouth. There's all kinds of risks that you need to be aware of right there. If you have blinds, so you've got blinds in your classroom, these little strings with the little dingly thing on them, all right, these need to be out of the reach of children too, all right? I would prefer not to have these type of items. If you can do the ones that roll up or the ones that have the stick, those are best. I actually am against having blinds in the classroom, period, for multiple different reasons. But the biggest thing is that the cords are out of the reach of children. You don't want them to strangle on it, get it around their neck, strangle on it. Sometimes this little thing at the end of the cord, they will stick it in their mouth, and so it becomes a choking hazard. There's a lot of risk with the cords from blinds and drapes, all right there. Cleaning supplies. All right, handling, storing, and disposing of hazardous waste. Your cleaning supplies are clearly marked and out of the reach of children. So sometimes when you're spraying down your tables and you're doing your disinfecting, and oh my gosh, Johnny is about to pull Sarah's hair, so we just set this down and then we run over to take care of this situation, and then I forget that I just set down this spray bottle on the child's table, and now, here comes Natalie, and you got a problem, all right? So make sure that your cleaning supplies are clearly marked and out of the reach of children. And I see a lot of people store chemicals in the bathroom, and I'm like, that's the worst place, because that is the one area of the classroom where supervision is limited. And, so we don't want the chemicals stored in the bathroom either right there. Yeah. Oh, Erica, yeah, I can tell y'all some really scary stories about blinds and the cords on the blinds too. And of course, our friends at the insurance company have some horrific stories where children have died in classrooms over cords from blinds. All right, it's bad stuff. Medications, make sure you are storing medication, Epipens, out of the reach of children in a locked container. So if you're doing it in the classroom, it's in the cabinet, out of the reach of children, office if possible. But like we've already talked about, Epipens need to be accessible back there. Personal belongings. Now, children's personal belongings, make sure you're going through their personal belongings whenever they bring them in the morning. Kids like to smuggle things into the classroom, and I could spend our time remaining today talking about, things that I have seen brought into the classroom in my 34 years of experience. All right, y'all would not believe some of the things that I have seen brought into the classroom. It's actually pretty funny, but you need to make sure you're looking through the child's personal belongings and making sure nothing unsafe or unsanitary is being brought in. Now, teachers, the adult in the classroom, I prefer y'all to have lockers or something up in the office where personal belongings can be stored and locked up, and nothing is brought into the classroom but the teacher, all right, or any medication that they're required to have accessible to them. But even in your purse, in your backpack, all right, you probably have a lot of items that are very harmful to the students. I know of a school up in the North Texas area, and this is about 12 years ago now, where the teacher left her purse out and the children got a bottle of Advil. This was in a toddler classroom. The children got a bottle of Advil and was able to get the lid off, and they ate the entire bottle of Advil. I mean, you got to think about it. Advil kind of has that candy coating on it, that red maroon coating on it. And this was a toddler classroom, and the crazy thing is they don't know how full that bottle was, so they don't know how many Advils were taken. They don't know which kid ate what, or which kid ate how many. There was a lot of unknowns in that scenario. So the entire toddler classroom was rushed to the emergency room and had their stomachs pumped because the teacher left her purse out and the kids got into it. All right, that was a bad situation. So be aware of personal belongings. Make sure they're locked up and inaccessible. I prefer them not to be in the classroom at all. Hot drinks. So if you need your coffee, and I'm a coffee drinker, so I get it. I need my coffee, but I would never take something like this into a classroom. All right. We prefer hot liquids not to go in the classroom, but if you do, make sure that it's got a secured lid where if it is spilled or if a child gets their hand on it, they're not going to burn themselves or spill that hot liquid on them. All right. Make sure that you've got an adequate supply of disinfecting and sanitizing chemicals in your classroom, especially right now. We've got to have that. All right. Out there. All of your trash cans. Basically, the rule on trash cans is that if a bodily fluid is placed in a trash can, it must have a lid on it. If there is no bodily fluid placed in a trash can, then it doesn't have to have a lid. My whole thought on that is that pretty much anything we throw away in our early education and after school programs most likely has bodily fluid on it, because our kids put everything in their mouths or they whatever. So, best idea that every trash can have a lid on it. All right. So be aware of that right there. Check for choking hazards. I still love the old toilet paper tube test. All right. If a toy or manipulative can fit through a toilet paper tube, it's a choking hazard and needs to be removed from the classroom. If it can't fit through a toilet paper tube, then it's pretty safe. But always check for choking hazards in your program. And I'm going to go back to children's personal belongings and their little backpack or diaper bags that are brought in. That's typically where choking hazards are brought in. Y'all know those little bouncy balls, the super balls that you used to get out of the gumball machines, at the restaurant, but those bouncy balls. I know of a program up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and this was like in the early 90s, where a child had one of those bouncy balls, and they choked and suffocated and died in the classroom by putting one of those bouncy balls in their mouth. So it was a really sad and unfortunate situation. Okay. Paper clips, push pins, staples, you want to avoid using those in the classroom. Because again, staples, I've actually had kids that were sent to the emergency room back when I was a district manager for a large childcare organization, because the teacher was taking staples out of the wall and they were going all over. Oh, we're going to vacuum them up at the end of the day. Well, then a kid actually got a staple in their eyeball. It was a bad situation. Push pins are pretty obvious right there. But you want to avoid those type of things when children are present. All right. Don't ever leave a child alone on a diaper changing table. Make sure that the child is strapped onto the diaper changing table. Make sure that the adult always keeps their hand on the child. I prefer both. All right. Now, licensing is going to tell you either the child is strapped in or the adult keeps their hand on the child. I'm going to go with both. All right. But we don't want the child rolling off of the diaper changing table. That's not a good situation right there. All right. Make sure that your furniture and equipment is in good repair, that it doesn't have sharp edges or splinters. Like I said earlier, our equipment, we have a lot of wear and tear. All right. And things break. All right. Once furniture and equipment is broken, it needs to be removed from the classroom. All right. We had a situation, this was kind of, again, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area about 15 or 20 years ago, with one of those like little tight plastic houses, and those are put together with those plastic screws, and this one particular little house, the screw started coming out and was protruding out. Well, they had it in like a 4-year-old classroom, and one day this little girl climbed up on top of this house, and of course the teacher's like, Jennifer, get down from there. Jennifer, get down. So the little girl's like, ha ha ha, I'm gonna slide down off of the roof. Well, when she slid down, she caught that screw right here, and it ripped her open from her mouth all the way up to her ear. The kid had to have like extensive plastic surgery. It basically ripped her wide open from that screw protruding. And then it turned into this big lawsuit. And during the lawsuit, and of course the licensing investigation and everything, the teacher's over here going, I kept telling the director that house was unsafe and it needed to come out of the classroom. And then the director's going, I kept telling the teacher to keep the kids away from it until the maintenance man came to take it out. And it was this whole finger pointing match between the director and the teacher. Bottom line is, it shouldn't have been there. The moment anyone noticed that it wasn't safe, it should have been removed from the classroom. All right. So, when you have furniture and equipment that's not in good repair, make sure you're getting it out of there. All right. Your rugs, make sure that your rugs have the non-skid backing. This is one of those things that you get what you pay for. All right. If you order a classroom rug from Discount School Supply or Lakeshore or Kaplan or School Specialty, you're going to get a rug that is made for our environment. If you go to Walmart, you go to IKEA, you go to Home Goods, those rugs are not typically made for our environment. They may or may not have a skid-proof backing. All right, you could be placing yourself at risk right there. Actually, in my 34 years of working in this industry, one of the craziest lawsuits I've ever seen was about a rug. And it was a rug that was in the entryway of the school, and it had nothing to do with a child or an employee or a parent. It was a grandmother that had come into the program to see an ancillary program, an ancillary event. And when grandma was walking in, she tripped and fell on this rug and sued big time because of her falling down in the lobby. And the whole lawsuit that went on for like 5 years ultimately came down to, was the rug an acceptable rug to be in that lobby, and did it have a non-skid backing, and was it in good repair? It was crazy, and it technically it did. And so grandma just tripped over her own 2 feet. The school got very lucky. They actually won the lawsuit. The court came back and said grandma could have fallen at home, she could have fallen at Walmart, she could have fallen in the preschool. There was no negligence. It was a good rug. It's one of those things that happened. They got lucky. All right. And you know what saved them? They didn't throw away the rug after the accident. So, yeah. When opening and closing doors, be cautious. The number one significant event we have in our industry is children getting their fingers either cut off or smashed in door frames, all right, when you're opening and closing doors. So be very, very aware of the location of the children, the proximity of the children when opening and closing doors. We don't want to slap them in the face with a door, but we don't want their fingers to get caught and pinched in that door frame. But that is the number one significant event that we see in our programs is the kids getting their fingers smashed indoors, all right? Check your water. We don't want our water too hot. We don't want children to get burned whenever they're washing their hands. Be aware of plants. I love living objects in classrooms, and I like plants and things like that in our classroom, but be aware of poisonous plants. We don't want poisonous plants in our classrooms. I saw someone mention a knife being brought into the classroom in child's personal belongings. I've had that one before too. But, kitchen knives. There was an incident back when I was a director many years ago. One of my competitors had an incident where it was a birthday celebration. I want to say it was the director's boyfriend. Or the director or one of the teachers' birthdays, and they had a big sheet cake in the lobby, and this giant knife, like Jason from Friday the 13th knife, that they were cutting and serving the cake with, and they just left it completely unattended in the lobby of the program. And so when the kids were being picked up by the parents and the kids would run into the lobby, they're picking up this knife and it was a bad incident. It was good for me because I got a lot of enrollment out of it. Just kidding. Not really. But anyways, make sure that those kitchen knives as well are kept out of the reach of children during those type of situations. Make sure you've got good attendance tracking processes. I always recommend at least 3 different ways that you are tracking attendance. In order to properly supervise children, you need to have documentation of who you're supposed to be supervising. Make sure you're checking your playground multiple times a day for debris that is either blown onto or thrown onto your playground, or you're checking for neighborhood animals that come onto your playground and use your sandbox as a litter box, all right? You need to be aware of this stuff, because if you have an animal that is, using your playground as a bathroom, then your toddlers go outside and they think it's snack time, and we don't want them eating that. So you need to be walking and checking your playground often for things that are blown onto it or thrown onto it, or the neighborhood animal things, all right? Make sure that children's clothing is appropriate for the weather that is outside. Make sure that they have hoods, that the strings on the hoods, check for those. That's, again, a choking hazard and a strangulation issue. When you are out on the playground, make sure that you're zoning it appropriately. I have a whole training on my website on playground supervision. Y'all can check that out. In the middle of the summer is coming up. Check for slides. Make sure that slides are not too hot for the children. We don't want them burning their legs whenever they're going down. All right. Check your playground for splinters, nails, screws, those things. Again, we get the blind eye from time to time, and we don't notice those things. If you have gates that are on your playground, make sure that gates are closed whenever children are out there. Sometimes our landscaping companies come out to mow our playgrounds and they leave the gates open, and we're not aware of it, and we let the kids run loose, and now Johnny's 2 miles away. All right, there you go. All right, so that's a lot on building premises. I have a couple of different safety checklists that are on my website that y'all can pull, check that out to help you with your building premises, to be aware of it. All right, last topic that we've got to cover in today's training. We're doing right on time. I was shooting for 11:30 so that I could give you about 30 minutes to do your worksheet. So we're doing fantastic. but handling, storing, and disposing of hazardous waste. All right. So, we've got our chemicals that we're using for sanitizing and disinfecting. We have our dirty diapers with, soiled diapers or poopy diapers that we're dealing with. We work in early education and after school. Our children have bumps and bruises all the time. All right. We have minor accidents. You've got blood that is shed whenever you have a minor accident. The other thing is bodily fluid. I want y'all to really kind of make a list of all of the different bodily fluids that we deal with on a daily basis. Not just, urine and feces, but we're also talking about spit up, sweat, snot. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. We deal with a lot of bodily fluid. So that needs to be handled in a very particular way. All right. Even before the pandemic, all right, this is a conversation that we used to have. Again, so many things we were already on top of prior to the pandemic. But what type of personal protection equipment do you have in your program to protect you when handling, storing, and disposing of hazardous waste? All right. And again, y'all might want to write this down because this might be on your worksheet that you're going to complete here in a minute. But what type of personal protection equipment are you going to use in your program? Obviously, gloves are your best defense right here. Be aware of latex allergies. Some individuals may have allergic reactions to latex, so you might want to go with a good, durable food handler's glove. I think those are perfectly fine. You got to remember that, once again, the best way to prevent the spread of illnesses, the best way of handling and storing and disposing of hazardous waste is washing hands with soap and water. All right. So when you're washing your hands with soap and water, the gloves that you're wearing are just an extra layer of protection. All right. Now, again, we still require gloves anytime someone is dealing with bodily fluid or anytime they're dealing with a hazardous chemical. All right. So even your disinfecting and sanitizing, I like it when you wear gloves when you're doing that. Okay, but that's not the only thing. You could have face shields or face masks, all right, whenever you're dealing with a chemical or hazardous waste. That's going to help you too, especially once again when you've got blood involved or a large amount of bodily fluids. So you have a child that vomits in your program or has a massive blowout diaper of diarrhea. It's best practice to put on a mask whenever you're cleaning those large spills right there, all right? Because you don't want to breathe that in or accidentally get that stuff in your mouth. Goggles, all right? Once again, when we're dealing with a large bodily fluid spill or a chemical spill in your program, the goggles to protect your eyes is a good personal protection equipment that you can use too, all right? So lots of stuff that you can have in your program to help protect yourself right there. All right. So again, thoroughly wash your hands with soap and water both before and after you handle, store, or dispose hazardous waste. Make sure you're washing your hands after you remove gloves. So, wearing a glove is not going to keep you from needing to wash your hands. You're still going to do that. Use your everyday antibacterial soap is the best thing that you can use right there. You want to avoid anything that is harsh or abrasive. And I know that, right now, again, we're focusing so much on hand washing. We got all these pretty scents and nice colors and smells and fragrances and everything. Make sure that even though it's been spruced up with a nice smell and a nice design, that it's still just a good antibacterial soap. All right. Your generic basic stuff sometimes is the best thing right there. All right. If you do come into contact with a bodily fluid, make sure that you're washing with soap and water as soon as possible. If you get it in your eyes, you're flushing your eyes out with that water as well. All right. Always use soap and water when it's available. Otherwise, you can use hand sanitizer for children over the age of 2. All right. Whenever you talk about personal hygiene and handling, storing, and disposing of hazardous waste, try to avoid splashing, spraying, splattering, or the generation of droplets when attending to an injured person or an ill person. You know, sometimes you have that child that vomits all over the classroom and you're like, ugh, and you get the towel and you just toss it down. Well, when you toss that towel down onto that vomit, it's then going to splatter and you're going to increase the area that has now been exposed. All right, so you want to avoid that right there. Don't eat, drink, smoke, apply cosmetics or lip balm, or handle your contact lens anytime there's been a likely exposure of a bodily fluid or a chemical, for obvious reasons right there. Once again, keep your food and drinks away from refrigerators, freezers, shelves, or cabinets where you could have a potentially harmful chemical or bodily fluid. We typically don't store that kind of stuff in our refrigerators, but just be aware of that. Okay. All right, we talked about gloves. We talked about eye protection as part of your personal protection equipment. All right. Great. On housekeeping and waste disposal. All right. Anytime you dispose of a hazardous material, so whether it's a chemical, a cleaning product, a dirty diaper, blood, all right, mucus, anytime you dispose of these items, technically the garbage bag needs to be labeled with hazardous material inside. All right, so when you go back and you look at OSHA guidelines, it's going to tell you that those bags of trash need to be labeled with hazardous material before they're thrown into your dumpster. Okay, now some of you might be going, oh, I've never done that. Well, look at the garbage bags. If you're ordering your garbage bags from a commercial supplier, you might be surprised that they have hazardous material already printed on them. All right. Most of the garbage bags that we order from commercial suppliers, it'll be pre-printed on there. If it's not pre-printed, just print up a whole bunch of address labels, all right, that say hazardous material inside. When you pull that trash bag out of the trash can, just slap on a label, make sure it sticks, and then you can toss it in your dumpster. But as crazy as it sounds, when your sanitation people come to empty your trash dumpster, if they get cut or scratched by one of those trash bags and they get exposed to a hazardous material, they could sue you. All right, and so we want to make sure that that is that's labeled on there, and especially if you're handling or disposing things like broken glass or sharp objects, we need to make anyone that is handling that bag of trash or that sharp object, they need to be aware that there is something hazardous in there. Laundry. Let's talk about laundry. When you have a child or an adult that their clothing has bodily fluid on it. So you have a child that gets a bloody nose and they get blood all over their shirt, all right? Or the child that vomits and they get, the vomit all over their clothing. Best practice is to bag it up and send it home for the parents to wash, all right? That is best practice right there. I would probably rinse it out, especially if it's like an underwear full of poop. I mean, no one wants to come home and open up a baggie and this underwear just be full. That's kind of gross. So, wear your gloves, rinse it out in the toilet, but then bag it up and send it home for the parents to wash. If you have a washer and dryer at your facility, I would avoid washing these items in your facilities. If you have a shirt that has blood all over it and you go and you throw that in your washing machine, you're now contaminating that entire washing machine. So if you choose to do that, whether it's blood or vomit or mucus, you need to make sure you're sanitizing that washing machine after that load of laundry. All right, so you're going to run a load just with water and disinfectant solution. Make sure you're wiping and sanitizing around the rim of the washing machine. Otherwise, you're going to continue to contaminate everything that you wash in there. So you want to keep that in mind right there. And something else that I don't think I have mentioned yet about handling hazardous waste and handling chemicals, always follow the manufacturer's instructions. Don't ever supersize it. Sometimes when we have a lot of illnesses going on in our program, we tend to want to supersize the recipe. If it says, 1 tablespoon of disinfectant solution to a gallon of water, and that's what the manufacturer says to do, well, you know what? We had 3 kids with hand, foot, and mouth this week. I'm going to do 2 tablespoons because I want to make sure we knock this out. Don't do that. Okay? Now you're at the risk of chemical burns, all right? Asthmatic responses. I mean, the list goes on and on right there. Follow the manufacturer's instructions exactly as written, all right? Very good. Anytime, and I think we've already talked about this in a previous conversation, but anytime you do have a hazardous material that is going in the trash can, I do recommend, if it is a lot of blood or a lot of mucus or vomit or that diarrhea diaper, that you do get it straight to the dumpster, all right? Now, everyday garbage, yeah, we can dispose of that at the end of the day, but if it is something that is hazardous, I would get it out of the classroom, out of the building as fast as possible, all right? So that way it will eliminate a lot of the risk for you right there. All right. We did it. We got through all 6 of those topics in 2.5 hours. Wow, I'm impressed. That was good. And y'all stuck to the rules, the favors that I asked you perfectly. That was awesome. Good job, everybody. You did it. Again, those of you that kind of joined in late, if you missed any part of this webinar today, it will be posted on Facebook. It will also be posted on our website. You can go back and watch any of this over again. If you have people that missed today's webinar, once again, they can go back and they can watch it or re-watch it if they need to. All right, the worksheet that you're going to complete should now be posted on my Facebook page. So if you refresh your browser or just go to the top of the page, you should see the link to complete your online worksheet. It's going to ask you for a credit card. There is a $15 fee for the certificate of completion. So you'll, if you're going to pay with a credit card, then you're going to click on online worksheet paying with a credit card. If you have an online account set up with me, so your school has set up an online account, then you're going to click on online worksheet paying with an account number, all right? So make sure you click on the correct worksheet. If you click on the wrong one, you're probably going to have to redo it. So we want to make sure that you're clicking on the right one. All right. Just really quickly, a couple of things that I have coming up. We're going to be doing another director and teacher workshop on May 7th and May 8th. So that's just in a couple of weekends. On the director workshop, it's going to be what the best do better than everyone else. And then on May 8th, for our teacher workshop, we'll be doing summer and field trip safety. So that's always going to be a good one right there. For those of you that are interested in my director credential course, the 4-day class that I offer, we're doing that hybrid right now. So you can either do it in person or virtually, whatever you feel comfortable. My next class is May 10th through the 13th, and we are still registering for that class right there. If you have already taken my Director Credential course, we have our advanced course, our Director 2.0, next week, April 27th through the 29th. You still can register for that one. That one will only be virtual, so no in-person for that one. My Tim at 10 webinars that I do at 10 o'clock, we've got 4 of those coming up in the month of May. So on May 6th, we're going to talk about recruitment techniques. On May 18th, we're going to talk about more on food allergies. On May 25th, we're going to talk about building your compliance binder for childcare licensing. And on May 27th, we're going to talk about staff recognition programs. So check out my website, timthetrainer.com. Click on Tim at 10. I usually post dates and topics 30 days in advance, so you can check out what's going to be happening. If you're not able to make it at 10 a.m., that's okay. They are always recorded, and they are always available for you to watch on Facebook or on my website, timthetrainer.com. All right. So once again, the link to complete your worksheet is on my Facebook page. It should be there now. I will also post the links on the chat screen here in just a moment. Once I end the video, I will cut and paste those links into this chat section as well. All right, so those of you that are saying you can't find the link, I would just refresh your browser and it should be the very first posting on our Facebook page. All right, thank you everyone so much for joining me today. We had a wonderful group of people. I appreciate all of you so much. Stay healthy, stay safe, and I will see all of you very, very soon. Bye.